Hello friends, welcome back to our channel Demystify Front End, and this is the 7th video in the series Build Your Own Angular Forms. So in the last few videos we saw how ngModel implements two-way data binding for different type of form elements like simple inputs, checkbox, single select and multi-select. In this video we are going to cover how ngModel works with custom form elements. This is our use case component, and you can see I have included one more component here, that is counter component. So first let me show you how it works. So the counter component has a label which shows the current value of the number, and so when you click on the plus button, the number will increment by 1, and when you click on the minus button, number will decrement by 1. But if you just notice, the current value of the counter component is 0, while the value in the app component is 5, right? So now in the app component, yes, we have this variable count 5, and now I want to sync it with the counter component. So what I do here, I'll just implement the two-way data binding through ngModel, and I'll pass the count variable. So let's check what happens. Okay, so let's open the console. You can notice there is this error shown here in the console logs: no provider for injection token ng value accessor. Okay, so let's check that. So now if you have been following this series from the start, and then you must be aware of like why are we getting this error, but still I'll try to explain. So let's go through some older slides in the series. So what happens, this ngModel has a dependency, right? So it has a dependency on this di token ng value accessor. Let me show you in the code as well, it will be easy for you. So let's open the ngModel. By the way, I have attached the link to this to the code in the video description. You can just go and check out. Here you can see in the ngModel what we are doing. We are injecting this di token. So if you are aware of the dependency injection in Angular, how it works, it's well and good, but if you want to know it in depth, in detail, you can just write it in the comments. I'll make a separate video. So what happens when you inject something, there must be something configuring this di token. So there must be some service which is configuring this di token. By configuring, I mean to say, like when a service is configured for a di token, it means whenever that di token is injected in any of the directive and the component, the service instance which is configured on that di token, it will be provided to that requesting class. Okay, so what happens now, this ngModel has a dependency on this di token, but we are getting this error which says no provider for injection token ng value accessor. So what happens, but we are not getting this error for rest of the form elements, right? If I comment it, what you will see, let's go to the app component here. So when we comment it out, or when we don't apply the ngModel, you will see this ngModel directive doesn't throw any error for rest of the form elements, right? For these two inputs, this single select, this multi select, and this checkbox, it is working fine, no error, because ngModel is getting the instance of control value accessor directive which is configured for that di token for these elements, and that control value accessor instance is different for different type of elements, which we have already covered in the last few videos. So what happens when you apply ngModel on a simple input like number input, text input, or email input? Whenever the ngModel inject this di token, it get hold of this default control value accessor, right? So when you apply the ngModel on this input, there is one more directive that gets applied behind the scenes. So if you go and check out the code of default control value accessor, you will see it has a special selector here. So what this selector says, this directive gets applied on all the inputs except the checkbox, because the checkbox is handled in a different way. Like we subscribe to different sort of events, and we write to the checkbox in a different way, to different properties. So what happens now when you apply the ngModel on this simple input, so not only the instance of ngModel directive is created, but along with one control value accessor instance is also created, and that is default control value accessor in this particular case. Similarly, if you apply ngModel on a simple on a different input, like let's say checkbox, now this default control value accessor won't be created. Rather, this the instance of checkbox control value accessor directive will be created. Now what happens? Now there is an interaction between the ngModel and the control value accessors. Okay, and likewise, this is the complete picture. So we have a default control value accessor when you apply the ngModel on the simple inputs. When you apply the ngModel on the checkbox, you have this checkbox control value accessor, and like so we have single select and multi select control value accessor based on where you apply the ngModel directive on which element. Okay, and now it acts as a layer. It acts as a layer between the ngModel and the elements where you apply the ngModel. So let's say if we have a single select where you apply the ngModel directive. So now ngModel doesn't write to these type of form controls, form elements directly, right? Because there is a complexity involved. Like when you write to these form elements, you write to different attributes. Like for the input, for the simple inputs, you usually write to the value property, but in case of the checkbox, you write to the checked property. And in case of this single select and multi select, there are some complex scenarios which you have to cover. So it's not possible to handle all the complexities that is involved with in each form element directly inside the ngModel. Rather, what it does, it just interface with the appropriate control value accessor, and these control value accessors are special in a case like they are basically following a standard interface, right? And they implement some methods which the ngModel can invoke, and through that it can easily write to the underlying host element, and it can easily read the updates coming from the host element, and the host element is the element where we apply the ngModel. Okay, so now I know it if you're new to the channel it can sound a bit difficult to you, but I recommend you go and watch series from the very first video, and you will get to learn a lot of things, like wow, one directive can inject another directive. Yeah, so now the next question must be something in your mind, like how ngModel gets hold of this default control elixir. This is the directive, this is the directive. Yeah, but that is possible through the dependency injection. Okay, so what happens now? This directive default control elixir, it configure this TI token. It configure itself on this TI token. So whenever this TI token is injected, it gets hold of this default control elixir, and it can simply write it to the default control elixir, and which can eventually write to the underlying host element, that is the input element. Similarly, when it is this default control elixir is aware of, like whenever there is a change in the input, as it is subscribing to the relevant events emitted from the underlying host element, and when it gets the update, it simply emit that update to the ngModel, because ngModel has already registered for the changes on this directive, and ngModel can pass on that updated data to the use case component, that is app component. Now the question arises, like when we apply the ngModel directive on this counter component, which is a different in the sense like it's a custom component, and you want to apply the two-way data binding on this, but why it is breaking? And the reason being is because it doesn't find any control value accessor directive instance, and that's why it is breaking, and that's why you get this error, no provider for injection token. So now what we can do, we will have to go to the counter component, and what we can do, we have to basically configure the DI token, that is ng value accessor. So for that, what we can do, we define a provider. So let me define a provider first, and whenever the ngModel is injecting that DI token, this component which is basically configuring this, so it will provide the instance of itself, like this component. So we can make use of use existing, you can pass it in the providers array, counter provider. Now why doing this? What you are doing, basically every component has its own dependency injector, right? And its dependency injector basically provides you the dependency you ask for, right? You can ask for a class, you can ask for anything, any value or any DI token. So what will happen when the ngModel, let's go to the app component. So here, this is the app counter component where you apply the ngModel, right? Now what happens, this ngModel will ask for the DI token ng value accessor, right? So who will resolve it? Who will provide that dependency? Of course, the injector of the counter component. Now the counter component must have the information, like whenever someone asks, some children ask for a dependency or any directive which is applied on the component itself, like this ngModel, what how should I resolve that, how should I resolve that dependency, in this case ng value accessor. So now it should have the dependency injector should have a information, like if someone asks a DI token from me, what should I provide. So now we are seeing here, like whenever someone asks, so it will make use of this provider and it will provide the instance of counter component. Now you can see that error is gone now, right? Now we have a different error, that is this dot value accessor right value is not a function. So who is calling this? Let's go. So ngModel is basically expecting some methods on the injected control value accessor, right? To make this component as a control value accessor, we should implement an interface that is control value accessor, right? And once we implement it, you see we have to implement these two methods. One is the write value, another is the register on change, right? And these are the two methods which our ngModel basically invokes. It invoke write value whenever it wants to write on the host element, in this case the counter component, and register on change is like whenever it wants to read update coming from the component, from within the component, it can just register for those updates and it will simply get all those updates. So let's implement the write value first. So in the write value, ngModel is passing what? So to the ngModel, if you see, we are passing the count, and the ngModel is basically pass that value onto the control value accessor. That is this counter component. So it expect that value, we can simply assign that value to the count class level variable. Okay, and this count variable is basically rendered in the template here. So now see what happens. Okay, so great, it is 5 now. Okay, so you can see the value is synced. Okay, but what about this one? Let's check the console. When you click on the plus and minus buttons, what happens? Now it is saying that register on change. Yes. So what happens, like when the change detection was triggered, when you pass the input, ngModel is basically trying to register for the changes, right? So what does ngModel pass to register on change method? Let's check. So it passes a callback function, right? This one. So what we will have to do, we will have to capture this callback function inside the counter component, and we should invoke it so that we get update inside the ngModel. So let's go to the counter component and implement this one as well. So from the ngModel side, what we get a function. We can simply assign that function to this onChange class level variable which we have already defined. Okay, so we have the subscription from the ngModel side in the form of this function. Now whenever there is a change in the app component, we should simply invoke this onChange and should pass the most updated, most recent value of the count variable, so that it can emit that value back to the use case component. Okay, simple. Now let's check. Okay, so yeah, initial value is set here 5, and if I update it, okay, you can see now it is synced. So both the flows of the two data binding are working fine. Like we are able to write here and we are able to read the updated value from the custom form element. So this is how it works. I hope it bring clarity and it bring in-depth knowledge of like how the custom form elements work behind the scenes. Thank you very much.